Namaste. Welcome to new session. We have been considering the restraint of citta Vruttis. Having considered the citta Vruttis, now we are considering the restraint of citta Vruttis, the citta Vritti nirodha. On our plane, restraint of mind, restraint of mental modulations. Because on waking up, our mind starts functioning and it works absolutely incessantly until we don't go for sleep. So the mind would be working in some form or the other, incessantly for those whatever 8, 10, 12 hours or even more, without respite of even a moment. The mind will be always engaged somewhere, mind will be always having function. It is only when we are fast asleep, in a dreamless sleep, the psychological mind gets a rest. And now you should be knowing that even in a dreamless sleep, the citta is not at rest, but the mind is at rest. The psychological mind is at rest when it's a dreamless sleep for whatever duration of time. But then try to understand this mind is incessantly working. Like some of our body organs are working incessantly, such as the heart, such as the lung, they work lifelong. In the physical front of the embodiment, certain organs are incessantly working. The circulatory system, the respiratory system, the metabolic system, the endocrine system, they don't have breaks. They don't have respite. They don't have rest. Even if you are fast asleep, they continue to work. So we are aware of this fact that on the front of body, in our embodiment, there are incessant activities, absolutely, right from birth to death. Not even a moment of respite. With regards to our psychological mind, there is certain privilege for this psychological mind, that at least in state of sleep, dreamless sleep, it will rest. Occasionally when there is unconscious state, it will not work. It will cease from working, but we cannot say it is resting, because such a state of mind is never a restful state. Yet it doesn't work for some time. Otherwise, the mind is also incessantly working in our states of consciousness, such as awakeful state of consciousness and dream state of consciousness. The psychological mental mind is working incessantly. When it is working incessantly, there is a constant vrutyantara. It's not that the mind is engaged. Sometimes we have this idealism that we work with concentration and focus on certain things and we think that we are totally focused and no distractions, etc., etc. Yeah, distraction may not be there with regards to a particular subject. However, the mind is constantly working, it's constantly in movement. Mind doesn't stop, doesn't get fastened to any vritti. While we have focus on certain things and there is no distraction for a while, yet there is a movement in the mind taking place. Suppose you are engrossed in reading very interesting fiction, novel. Maybe you are in focus, you are in total focus and you really don't have distractions. The sounds around you don't really reach you. The things, moments around you don't really reach you. You don't take cognizance, you are just reading the book. But you are reading the book and you say you are engrossed, totally engrossed, undistracted. Only when you read a novel, very interesting novel, not a serious textbook of any subject, but novel, piece of literature. But then you are reading it. When you are reading that book, you are going from word to word, sentence to sentence, scenarios to scenarios, situations to situations. And therefore the mind is constantly in a movement. Mind is not stilled. Mind might be steady. So in one sense, understand when I say this, your mind might be very steady in your reading of novel. The mind is not really still in physical sense. Like we say, still objects and moving objects. Will your mind ever be a still mind when you are reading, when you are engrossed, when you have complete focus? No. The matter for the mind is changing. So the point is, in a wakeful state, the mind is constantly having modulations. So also in dream state of consciousness, that is on, only in dormant state of consciousness, when it is a dreamless sleep, that mind has a respite. That mind is not having modulation, perhaps, psychological mental modulations. So, the mind is incessantly working. The point is, the Mano-Vruttis are constantly changing. If the Mano-Vruttis are changing, it also implies that Chitta-Vruttis are changing. If the Mano-Vruttis are running, Chitta-Vruttis too are running. So, this needs to be understood. Now, when Patanjali speaks about Chitta-Vritti nirodha, see, usually those who are not familiar with the text with which Patanjali was familiar, they lose the bus. Because if you recall, I told you that Patanjali was well versed in Agama, Vaishnavagama, Pancharatra Agama. And that's why while dealing with Pramana, if you recall, I stressed this point, that he opts for Agama Pramana, not Shastra Pramana, not Shabda Pramana, not Shruti Pramana, not Aptavakya Pramana, but Agama Pramana. Because Patanjali got his instructions in yoga, in Sriman Narayana's exposition of Agama called Pancharatra Agama in Sri Vaikuntham, where the first ever instruction on yoga took place. So you recall this was related to you right in the beginning, that Patanjali's yoga comes from Pancharatra Agama, and Pancharatra Agama yoga to some extent is available in some of the Samhitas of Pancharatra, more importantly Ahirbudni Samhita. So, why Patanjali speaks about Chitta Vrittis, restraint of Chitta Vrittis, etc., etc., the influence of Pancharatra Agama is 100%, absolutely 100%. Therefore, we need to consider this dimension, which usually is untouched by anyone who has written on yoga, Patanjali's yoga. You see, Patanjali, when he speaks of restraint of citta vruttis, it is not on psychomental plane that he speaks about restraint of citta vruttis. As a matter of fact, the whole yoga abhyasa, it is not a worldly endeavor. See, yoga has become a worldly endeavor today. Just as we have worldly endeavors of even art pursuits like learning music, performing music, playing music, practicing music, or other art forms, or other studies. I study philosophy, I study psychology, I study physics, I study mathematics. Similarly, yoga has become a worldly endeavor. Listen carefully, I am going to introduce you to very, very, very core classical aspect of yoga at this point in time, with which we are not really aware. We have made yoga as another worldly endeavor. It has become either pastime or hobby or whatever. Like music becomes, an art becomes, or any pursuit becomes. Somebody might study physics formally or informally. Somebody might be student of mathematics formally or informally. Because somebody is very, very interested in mathematics, does engage with mathematics very, very informally. Although not formally educated in mathematics, still does mathematics. Still good in mathematics. That's called vyasanga. Vyasanga means somebody having the hearty tendency for a particular subject, then that subject will be pursued. So yoga has become something like that. It has become either there is very, very formal education, and then we embark upon I am practicing yoga, I am doing yoga, I am learning yoga, I am studying yoga, I am teaching yoga. Like the other occupations and other vocations, now get to know. It is not like other worldly endeavors. Like you can say, I learn music, I study music, I practice music. You can't say, I learn yoga, I study yoga, I practice yoga. Why? Because you are not supposed to do yoga. Yoga is supposed to happen on you. You can practice music. And that is more important, that you learn music, you study music, you practice music, you perform music. It might incidentally happen on you, but that's not the major thing there in other art forms or other pursuits, even academic pursuits. You learn mathematics, you become proficient in mathematics, you become expert in mathematics, you become wrangler, the top mathematician in the world for all times perhaps, but you don't become mathematics. You don't become physics, you don't become music, you don't become painting, you don't become sculpting, you don't become sculpture, you sculpt. You don't become painting, you do painting. You do not become photograph, you become photographer. You don't become music, you play music. But yoga is a unique endeavor. Yoga has to happen on you. Until that time, it is no yoga. Until that time, it is just hobby, it is just pursuit, it is just discipline, or it is just learning about yoga. So to learn yoga, you should understand, being an adhyatmic subject, there is great amount of learning about oneself. When you learn mathematics, you don't learn about yourself. You learn physics, you learn mathematics, you learn chemistry, you learn music. You don't learn about yourself. But in case of yoga, to be learning yoga classically and really beyond the point of up to run up of yoga, yoga is an object and subject for you. You objectify yoga and you make it a subject and you go on learning it. You learn that, you learn that, you learn that. But actually, when you have come into fold of yoga, you learn about yourself. You learn your mind. More than your mind learning yoga, you learn your mind. More than your body learning yoga, you learn your body. You learn your embodiment. So somewhere try to understand what yoga is and how yogic dynamics are unusual dynamics. So there is actually not a right condition to say that somebody is lifelong learning yoga. One should be learning oneself. If you don't learn yourself while you are learning yoga, it is not yoga. If you are learning postures, if you are learning pranayam, if you are learning kriyas, if you are learning mudras, until that time it is not really yoga. But when you really start learning yourself, your own embodiment, your consciousness, your mind, your psyche, all your aspects, all in you aspects, when you learn about yourself, then that is really the launch point of yoga. Not until then. Until then it is all run up to yoga, which is necessary. Because you need to get oriented to the subject of yoga. So that's why it is adhyatmic subject where you are learning about yourself. So learning yoga means learning about oneself. So somewhere try to understand this dimension here. So now understand the vritti vijnana, vritti vyapara. How the mind would be functioning. When the mind is learning, observing and learning and studying objects outside. We have 5 kinds of objects outside for senses. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha. Objects in the form of sound, objects in the form of touch, objects in the form of forms, shapes and colors. Objects in the form of substances and tastes. Objects in the form of smell, odor, fragrance. So, the objects are outside and we learn them. Being a student of physics, the objects are outside and you learn that. Physics is outside you. You learn the physics which is outside you. You don't learn the physics which is inside you. You learn the chemistry which is outside you. You don't learn the chemistry which is inside you. Because we all have biochemistry. We have our physics. There is biophysics. We have physics within ourselves. We don't learn that in our physics. There is chemistry. We are all chemical beings. We are chemical processes. We are all chemical outcomes. We don't learn chemistry inside us. We learn chemistry outside. We go to schools, colleges, universities, academies, and we learn chemistry outside. We learn mathematics outside. We don't identify any mathematics within to be learnt. Mathematics is outside. So, all these arts even, they are outside. You learn those arts. Many of you have this impression yoga is also an art. But this is not that kind of art. Like other kinds of art where the art is external to you. And then you try to practice it, you try to master it. Yoga is not that kind of art. If it is looked at as an art. If it is looked at as a science, it is not like other sciences, where you have to be outwardly reading, studying, observing something outside you. You have to observe, and the observed are outside, and that's how you learn sciences. In yoga, the observed is inside. Observed is you yourself. So, it amounts to saying you yourself are learning you yourself with you yourself. Hope your brain is not spinning. So you are learning about yourself, in yourself, within yourself. So you yourself, you are teacher to yourself, while you yourself, you are students of yourself. That's why yoga is said to be heuristic subject, where one is student and teacher within. So yoga is something to do with one's own self. So now understand the whole realm of Vrutti. Whole realm of Vrutti. Because while we were studying Chitta Vruttis with the help of examples, the prameya was outside in case of pramana. The knowable was outside, like a rose, a pot, a post, a mountain, a river. You recall the cognition when it was taught to you. So the examples were given in the external realm, that this is a flower, this is a pot, this is a house, this is a river, that is a mountain, this is sun, that is moon, etc., etc. The objects, knowables were outside. The prameya was outside. The knower was inside. Pramata was inside. Prameya was outside. So subjective entity, objective entity. And instrumental entity partially, prominently within you, maybe little some extraneous assistance such as instruments like microscopes and telescopes, etc., etc. In case of viparyaya, the rope is outside, the snake is outside. Snake is also external object. Rope is also external object. And one external object is imposed on another external object because of some factors of similarity, etc. So, viparyaya was again illustrated with an external example of rope and snake, nacre, silver, pole and man, or the mirage. In case of mirage, the sand is outside. The light refraction of the sun rays, because of which you have the mirage illusion, that sun is also external to you. The light is also external to you. So when we were studying Chitta Vruttis, we took recourse to external objects and we tried to understand pramana, viparya, vikalpa, nidra. At least pramana, viparya, vikalpa, because there were external objects. Now we need to understand here, yoga is such a pursuit where the whole basis for mental activity is totally different. The thinker is you, the thought about is you, or in you, or about you, or pertaining to you. The thinking is also integral to you. So when Patanjali speaks about yoga chitta vritti nirodha, he is not suggesting stop pramana, stop viparyaya, stop vikalpa, stop nidra, stop smriti, or restrain pratyaksha anumana agama, restrain viparyaya vikalpa, restrain nidra smriti. That is not being suggested that way. Now you have to understand. Because basically to be doing yoga, we are going internally. It takes place in internal realm. You don't need world around you to be doing yoga. To be doing anything otherwise, you need world around you. Even if you are a painter or sculptor, you need that pencil or brush or colors or the chisel and sledgehammer outside you. Canvas for painter outside, drawing paper outside. It's not part of your embodiment. So see how many things are external, extraneous, objective, worldly. They pertain to the world. If they are not there, you will not be able to do. If there is no canvas available, no paper available, no pencil available, no brush available, no watercolor available, no crayon paint available, what are you going to do with your drawing? You need all those things. So also music. You need instruments, you need accompaniments, accompanists. In the case of performing arts, you need audience in front of you. Without audience in front of you, what is your performance? Tell me. You don't perform when nobody is around you, nobody is audience. You practice, you say. Then you practice. But when you perform, you understand the essentiality of audience around you, in front of you. If there is no audience, you won't perform, you won't practice. So in case of performing art, you require someone in front of you to receive you, to applaud you. So there are performing arts, there are fine arts. Now this is a spiritual art, adhyatmic art. You really don't need extraneous and external things. Even if they are there, they don't have that significant role. You have to study yourself by yourself, through yourself. That is how yoga is. So what kind of chitta vruttis would you be having in yoga, tell me? This is flower, that is rose, this is mountain, that is river, this is sun, that is moon. Is that the kind of vritti that you are going to have? Or in case if you have illusion, is it going to be that there is a rope inside and then you impose snake on the rope inside? You don't have rope inside, you don't have snake inside to be imposing on it. The rope and snake both are external objects. You have seen them outside and therefore you are imposing one on the other. So if there is viparya, it is not of the nature of rope and snake illusion or nacre silver illusion, imposition, or mirage imposition, etc., etc. Water imposition in mirage. So it's a totally different realm. This has to be understood. So when Patanjali speaks about chitta vritti nirodha, he is not speaking about restraint pramana, restraint pratyaksha anumana agama, restraint viparyaya, restraint vikalpa, restraint nidra smriti, etc., etc. It's all in the internal realm. Antar Vishwa. Yoga really commences when it is in the internal universe. As long as yoga doesn't have any connection with internal universe, that is no yoga. So the vrittis in the internal realm are totally different than external realm. This has to be understood very, very, very fundamentally. So when Patanjali speaks about chitta vritti nirodha yoga, and then he mentions the pramani viparya vikalpa nidra smriti, which are explained to you as they are in epistemology. External objects, external instruments, and then subjective entity. So it's a kind of interaction or intercourse between internal subjective entity and external objective world. And then what is taking birth is your vritti, your knowledge, your state of mind. your state of happy mind, sorrowed mind, etc. These are the offsprings of intercourse between subjective entity and external world. And then there is offspring. With this intercourse, there is an offspring. Offspring of the nature of what? You have some knowledge, worldly knowledge. I know this, I know that, I know these things, I know those things. Or I do not know these things, I do not know those things. And then your states of mind, delightful state, sorrowed state, highly delighted, excited state to highly sorrowful state, to deluded state. So various states of mind, they are offsprings of the interaction, intercourse between subjective entity within you and objective world outside you. This is how worldly knowledge, this is called laukika jnana. This is laukika jnana in philosophy. Whereas in yoga it is paramarthika jnana, antarika jnana. That's why Patanjali speaks about antaranga sadhana, antaratma sadhana, and not just bahiranga sadhana. Anyway, so while you are in yoga, you have to understand what is the pramana vritti, what is viparya vritti, where is viparya coming, which gets invalidated, what is vikalpa vritti, what is nidra vritti, what is smriti vritti. This is different smriti altogether. It is not like I remember this, I remember that, I remember all those things, I remember all those things and these things. Here, the memory is subjective. Very, very, very subjective. Memory about yourself. In the internal realm. Not memory about yourself while you move in external world. It is memory about yourself while you are moving, maybe yesterday and now you remember that. Maybe last week in the internal realm you experienced something and today you now having gone internally you remember. So you must go internally. So you go internally in every session of your practice. You go internally in every day of your practice, every week, every month, every year. And then when you recall something about internal realm, something experience about yourself, which is recollection of earlier experience, that is the smriti. Not the smriti which I gave you the illustration, somebody went to Delhi 25 years back and now remembers Delhi after 25 years. No. That is just an example for you to understand what is smriti vritti. Here it is internal realm. Memories of you, about you, when you are in. Because when you are in and when you are out, you are two different personalities. When you are within, you are nobody's father, nobody's mother, nobody's son, nobody's daughter, nobody's spouse, nobody's friend, nobody's foe, nobody's servant, nobody's master. In the external realm, all those relations crop up. You are somebody's somebody. You are somebody to anybody. You are perhaps somebody to everybody. So you are caught in the gravities of relationships. Then you are a father, you are a son, you are a wife, you are a husband, you are a daughter, you are a mother, you are uncle, you are nephew, you are niece, you are cousin, you are friend, you are foe, you are master, you are servant, you are teacher, you are student, you are creditor, you are debtor. So these relationships, you are obliged, you are obliger. So all these relationships crop up in the external world. Either you are somebody's son or you are somebody's father, and therefore you interact with your father or your son in a particular way. Or you are husband or wife of someone, and therefore you interact with that person as a husband, as a wife. Or that person as your husband and your wife or wife. So this all relationship, very, very complex relationships. When you are in the internal realm, you are nobody's nobody. Nobody is anybody to you. Anybody is nobody to you. Everybody is nobody to you. Ponder over this. Ponder over this. You are nobody is nobody. Nobody is nobody to you. Anybody is nobody to you. You are nobody to anybody. Everybody is nobody to you. For everybody, you are nobody. What is that status? So it is totally a different realm. So when Patanjali speaks about restraint of citta vruttis in yoga, restraint of citta vruttis, restraint of vruttis which come while you are in a yogic state. That's why yoga is not a practice of your life. As long as it is just a practice and something like lifestyle factor in your life, it is not yoga. Because lifestyle factors are so many things. You go to social club, you go to your friend's club, you go to job, you go to office, you go to workplace, you go to entertainments, you go to operas, you go to dramas, you go to music concerts. It's all lifestyle aspect. And yoga similarly. Like somebody going to opera, somebody going to, or daily going to workplace, somebody goes daily to yoga and he says, I have workout. See, such a misleading condition we have today in the world. Yoga is said to be workout. It is not at all a workout. It is work-in. And then work-in culture and workout culture are totally different. So now let me tell you that when pancha vrittis were spoken of, while in yoga, these are totally different pancha vrittis. And those vrittis are to be restrained. Yoga is not restraining the pratyaksha anumana agama that comes in your epistemological plane. Yoga is not restraining the imposition that takes place of snake on rope, of silver on nacre. Now that is not restraining. That is not suggested here to be restrained. And you cannot be restraining. How can you restrain? You will have the illusion and then you will be invalidating the illusion. You will come out of illusion. You can only come out of illusion. Where is the way to restrain illusion? Tell me. Now, as I said, Patanjali has enormous influence of Pancharatra Agama. There is a wonderful precept of in Pancharatra Agama about what we are dealing. You know, we have these states of consciousness. Even in modern science, psychology, they speak about this. A wakeful state of consciousness, dream state of consciousness, and then sleep state of consciousness. And then there is fourth state of consciousness. Perhaps you also have read about this in our Upanishads. Jagrata avastha, swapna avastha, sushupti avastha, turiya avastha. These are four states of consciousness. So Upanishads will also tell you about these four states of consciousness. And there, in Upanishadic delineation, you come across importance given to turiya avastha. Now, turiya avastha is not something that psychology has dealt with profoundly. It's the only fourth state of consciousness. But then turiya avastha is yoga avastha. Turiya avastha is accomplished yoga avastha. Turiya avastha is transcendent consciousness. That is called supra consciousness by Aurobindo. So what is supra conscious of Aurobindo? Is turiya avastha of consciousness. In that state, you are not man, you are not woman, you are not young, you are not old, you are not healthy, you are not unhealthy, You don't have caste, class, creed, race, gender, status, genetic background, genealogical background, ethnicity, nothing of all that sort. That is supra-consciousness. It's just pure state of being and not a state of being. Try to understand the depth of the statement. Don't just take it literally. It is just being and not a state of being. State of being means those are contortions, those are disfigurations. So spiritually, we do not have these states. Our Atma doesn't have Jagrata Avastha, Swapna Avastha, Sushupti Avastha or Turiya Avastha. It has no such states. It is immutable principle, changeless principle, constant principle, metaphysically a steady, stable principle without immutation. So you know that metaphysical subjective entity of the I, not the pronoun I, the self. The self is not man or woman, but you say you are man or woman. The self is not old or young, but you say you are young or old. The self doesn't have any caste, class, creed, gender, but you say you have caste, class, creed, gender, status, etc. So that's self. So when the state of consciousness in the state of self, that is supraconscious. Then you are not man, woman, young, old, oriental, occidental, or any time and space reference or frame. Today you say you are a person of 21st century, but in supraconsciousness there is nothing like no 21st century, no 20th century, no 19th, 18th century, no 25th century, no 50th century, no 100th century. That's supraconscious. You break the barriers of this time and space, spatialized conditions. Anyway, yoga is going internally. When you go internally there is no Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There is no January, February, March, April, May. There is no 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. Internally, all that is not there. So you transcend the time and space barriers in yoga. You are supposed to break these barriers in yoga. That is delimited, free from all delimitations. Freedom from all delimitations, escaping all gravities of delimitations. So in the internal realm, you start getting yourself insulated to the external almanac, that this is 2021, what went by was 2020, what is going to come is 2021, 2022. So what today it is Monday, it's going to be Tuesday tomorrow, yesterday was Sunday. All these things are not there. It is now 5 o'clock, it was 4 o'clock earlier, 1 hour earlier, it will be 5 o'clock, 1 hour later, etc. All those things are not there. You don't have to take your clock. You don't have to take your almanac when you are going to internal journey. It's a totally different world. It's a totally different universe. Therefore, the Vruttis will be totally different. Now let's see what is the precept given in Pancharatra Agama. Pancharatra Agama has spoken about Chaturvyuhas. Those are Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. There's a beautiful exposition which also tells us about our consciousness, states of consciousness. Our Jagrata Avastha is called Aniruddha. Our Swapna Avastha is called Pradyumna. Our Sushupti Avastha is called Sankarshana. And then Turiya Avastha is called Vasudeva. So actually these are all Vasudevas. They are Chaturvyuhas of Vasudeva. So there is Paravasudeva, Sankarshana Vasudeva, Pradyumna Vasudeva, Aniruddha Vasudeva, they are all Vasudeva. This is the most fundamental precept of Pancharatra Agama. Now Jagrata Avastha is called Aniruddha. What is Aniruddha? Aniruddha. What is Aniruddha? Incapable of nirodha. That is Aniruddha. So it is incapable of restraining. Whereas we all thinking of restraint of this very Jagrata Avastha. That is a fallacy. It is not like that. That is why the Chaturvyuhas declare Jagrata Avastha as Aniruddha. Why it is Jagrata Avastha? You can't restrain your identity that you are so and so, which is false metaphysically. You are man, woman, young, old, Occidental, Oriental, Indian, American, African, Asian, European, Australian. You can't restrain those things while you are in a wakeful state. So if you are Indian, you are an Indian. But when you are fast asleep, are you an Indian? If you are an American, when you are in a wakeful state, and you cannot restrain that because you cannot restrain the empirical I. The I says I am American. I says I am man or woman. That I says I am young or old. The I says that I am healthy or unhealthy. The I says that I am strong or weak. You can't really restrain. So Patanjali is not speaking about restraining these Vruttis. You can't restrain them. So he is not speaking about restraint of unrestrainable. So if you recall the question which Arjuna posed, which I quoted last session, Arjuna thought, I am Arjuna, I am in Dwapara Yuga, I am a Pandava, I am on the battlefield, I am a friend of Krishna. And then as Arjuna, he could never stop his mind. We also cannot stop our mind by being whatever we are, or we identify ourselves, or people identify ourselves. We can't restrain it. That's why Pancharatra says it is Aniruddha. It is unrestrainable. You can't restrain that the I-ness in you while you are in a wakeful state. That is why it is called a wakeful state. Your awakeful state means you are aware of world around you. How can you restrain? Can you say, I have restrained myself from the world, at the same time I am aware of the world around me? Impossible. Contradiction. So, yoga doesn't speak of restraining that vritti, I am so and so. That identity that we have in our business activity of life and for practical purpose of life. We have a name, we have father's name, we have surname, we have first name, we have last name. Then we have nationality, we have citizenship, nationality, etc. Then we have all these caste, class, creed, gender, status, stature, etc., conditions, etc., status, etc. You will be all the time aware of all those. And the restraining those is really of no avail, because actually they are all false. They are not existent. So even restraining those means you will be in a neurotic condition, that's a disease. Psychotic condition, that's a disease. If you lose your awareness of yourself, then it's a diseased condition of the neurology. Patanjali is not speaking about that. Chitta vritti nirodha. So therefore we must be familiar with the Pancharatra Agama to understand where yoga has been, first ever discourse of it has been given. And we are all keeping away from Pancharatra Agama, and then we are trying to understand Patanjali. We are totally separating Patanjali from being Adishesha Avatara, being Nitya Suri in Sri Vaikuntham, and then we are trying to understand Patanjali. This is not done. There is a flaw. There is a blunder. Anyway. So, Jagrata Avastha is Aniruddha Avastha. Aniruddha Avastha is not subject matter for nirodha. Therefore, you have to go to that altogether another state of consciousness which is neither awakeful, nor dreamy, nor dormant, but something which is altogether different. So, yoga commences when you are in that state. When you have gone, broken the barriers, even if you're not really transcended, broken the barriers and gravities of Jagrata Avastha, awakeful state, Swapna Avastha, dreamy state of consciousness, Sushupti Avastha, dormant state of consciousness, when they are not casting or they are not radiating their gravities on your chitta, then you have Vruttis of the internal realm. Now that is not aniruddha, that is not Jagrata Avastha. In yoga you are not supposed to be doing yoga awakefully. If you are doing awakefully yoga, then you are in a preparatory phase. You are in a rudimentary phase. You are not in essential phase of yoga. If you say, I am doing yoga very, very consciously, I am doing yoga very, very awakefully, I am alert and awake and I am learning, okay, you can learn that way. But when you are practicing yoga, if it is essential yoga, you will have to go past this attention, awareness, intent, etc., etc. So that's why Aniruddha Avastha. Then Pradyumna, Dyuhu means illumination, light. So in dreams, if you recall, I told you that it's all light game. It's all like laser show. We have dream experiences. All objects of dream are of the illumination form. You don't have real elephant in your dream. If at all you have dream on elephant, it is light effect of elephant in your mind. All dream objects are light effect. Be that river, be that mountain, be that sun and moon, be that whatever. It is all light effect. It is all illumination matter. It's all game of illuminations. When you say you saw dreams, you had dreams, it is all illumination games. That's why Pradyumna. Sankarashana. In state of sleep, dreamless sleep, you are close to that yogic state which I just now explained. You are nobody's nobody. While you are in dormant state, you are nobody's nobody. You are nobody's father, nobody's son, nobody's brother, nobody's husband, nobody's wife, nobody's sister, nobody's mother, nobody's cousin, nobody's nephew, nobody's niece, nobody's uncle, nobody's auntie, nobody's friend, nobody's enemy, nobody's boss, nobody's superior, nobody's inferior. Atra pita apita bhavati, mata amata bhavati, which I quoted during delineation on nidra vritti, the sleep. You are not an emperor, you are not a beggar. It's a levelizer, I told you. So, why? Because you are drawn into such a strong gravity, like a black hole. Can you say that I had dipped into black hole and I have come out from black hole? When you get into the black hole, you become black hole. You can't maintain your identity while you are in black hole. Or when you are around black hole, when the black hole has a gravity on you, you can't say I am this and that is black hole. Then that's not a black hole at all. Because black hole has such a strong gravity, enormous gravity, that you are drawn into it and you are unified into it, you become black hole. Then you can't come out of black hole, because nothing comes out of black hole. Nothing escapes from black hole, not even light escapes from black hole. Black hole is a kind of star. But then it is not a twinkle, twinkle little star, it is not a bright star. It is no star in that sense, in the sense of illumination. Because the light also cannot escape from black hole. That is karshanam, gurutva karshanam, akarshanam, karshanam. Now samyak karshanam, sankarshanam. We are all unified in Paravasudeva in our sleep. There is enormous gravity of the Vasudeva phase called Sankarshana. We are in its gravity. That's why we don't remain ourselves in sleep. We say, I had a sleep. But when you are sleeping, you are not sleeping. Like I gave you that example, John is sleeping, but one who is sleeping is not John. Because once you are in sleep, you lose that titular condition of being John. You are no longer a John when you are fast asleep. So I explained this also while we are dealing with Nidra. That's why it is Sankarshanam. Vasudeva has gravity on entire universe. That is why Bhagavad Gita also has a Pancharatric precept. Vasudevam idam sarvam. Vishnumayam idam jagata. Now understand, in mysticism, it is not the major instruction that all this is Vaishnavi or all this around is Vasudeva. Vasudevam idam. Idam. It doesn't say Vasudevam idam sarvam, Vasudevam adam sarvam. Idam. In the internal realm. In the internal realm, either we are in Vasudeva state of consciousness or Sankarshana state of consciousness or Pradyumna state of consciousness or Aniruddha state of consciousness, which are all Vasudevas. From Paravasudeva to we have the other three, the Vyuhas. Pradyumna Vasudeva, Sankarshana Vasudeva, Pradyumna Vasudeva, Aniruddha Vasudeva. They are all Vasudevas. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita says, Vasudevam idam sarvam. Idam means in the internal universe. It is all Vasudeva. Because we are not having another state of consciousness apart from four. Apart from four, we don't have fifth. Either we have in Jagrata Avastha, Swapna Avastha, Sushupti Avastha, or Turiya Avastha. Not the fourth. We don't exist in the fourth, in the fifth. We only exist in fourth and not in the fifth. There is no fifth. Therefore, all this is Vasudeva. All this means pointing at your own chest. You should say, all this is Vasudevatmakam. All this is Vasudeva. Because Jagrata Avastha is Aniruddha Vasudeva. Swapna Avastha is Pradyumna Vasudeva. Sushupti Avastha is Sankarshana Vasudeva. And Turiya Avastha is Paravasudeva. So this concept of Pancharatra one must be familiar with if you are going to be a student of yoga, particularly Vritti Vijnana now. Paravasudeva, Vasudeva in Vaikuntham. And when it manifestations in the form of animate creation, then these states are there. Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana. In Turiyavastha, Vasudeva. So, Patanjali is not referring to restraining the Vruttis that you get in worldly realm. Now you say, this is dog, that is cat, this is mountain, that is river, this is sun, that is moon, this is light, this is ball, that is flower. Patanjali is not speaking of restraining those Vruttis. Because they are unrestrainable, because you are not able to restrain your eye. If the eye is there, it is going to catch these things. Like mirror. Do you know about mirror? Mirror will never cease from casting reflections. Mirror will always have reflections. It will always give reflections. It will always radiate reflections. Even you apply a thick coat of tar and then you say nothing is reflecting in this now. The tar is reflected. Tar is being reflected. The mirror is reflecting tar. If you wrap your mirror in papers, thick papers and many papers, and then you can't say mirror is not reflecting. Mirror is indeed reflecting. That is right in front of it. the first coat of paper is being reflected. It is reflecting. Mirror will never cease to reflect. Mirror will ever be reflecting. You can't stop mirror from reflecting. No chance. Absolutely no chance. Even in total dark room, mirror will still reflect the darkness. Absolute total darkness. You can't say mirror is not reflecting. Mirror is reflecting, indeed reflecting. Absolutely reflecting. It is reflecting darkness, total darkness. So, mirror doesn't cease to reflect. So also pronoun I will never cease from vritti. That is why it is called aniruddha vritti. And therefore, Patanjali is not speaking about restraining all these vrittis which you studied as an example in your panchataya vrittis, pramana viparya vikalpa nidra smriti. By illustrations they were explained, but Patanjali is not speaking about restraining those vrittis because they cannot be restrained. Because the state of consciousness itself is aniruddha, unrestrainable. So then, what is to be restrained in Patanjali's purport? It is not stopping these vrittis which are coming in Jagrata Avastha and Swapna Avastha, or even Sushupti Avastha, because we know Sushupti is also Chitta Vritti. Sushupti also has a Chitta Vritti. Sushupti itself is Chitta Vritti. So all those 5 vrittis were studied as 5 vrittis, but restraint is not with reference to empirical Chitta Vrittis, with reference to the world outside, around, but with reference to universe inside. It is microcosm. Adhyatma tells us about this. Macrocosm and microcosm. This is microcosm. It is not just world. It is whole universe inside you. You don't have universe outside you. At the most you have global business. Still we have not embarked upon interplanetary business or intergalactic business. That mercantile has not yet arrived. So at the most we have global business. That's all. International business or global business. There is no interplanetary business or intergalactic business. In the internal realm, you have all that. And those vrittis are spoken of to be restrained, and they are restrainable. So finally I say these vrittis are not restrainable because of aniruddha consciousness. So Pancharatra tells us about this aniruddha, with which you must be familiar. You must be familiar with the Chatur Vyuhas, which comes in Vishnu Sahasranama, and also Bhagavad Gita brings in by mentioning Vasudevam, Idam Sarvam. Why Vasudeva? No Upanishad is mentioning Vasudeva. No Vedanta is mentioning Vasudeva. Pancharatra is mentioning Vasudeva, and Lord Krishna himself is the speaker of Pancharatra as Sriman Narayana in Sri Vaikuntham. There are many Pancharatric precepts in Bhagavad Gita, which I told you, which I will be telling you while we deal with Ishvara. With the concept of Ishvara is from Pancharatra. Bhagwan Krishna, although he says, I am in the heart of all, somewhere he doesn't say that I am in your heart and I rotate you on the wheel of Maya. He says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam vrudeshe arjun tishtati. Elsewhere he says, Sarvasya cha aham vrudhi sannivishtaha. For what? Mattaha smritir gnanam apohanam cha. So I reside in the heart for what? For generation of jnana, smriti, apohanam, etc. But he says, Ishvara resides in the heart of all. Ishvara sarva bhutanam Vruddeshe Arjuna tishtati Brahmayan sarvabhutani yantrarudhani mayaya tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata. Surrender unto him, he says there. Tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata. Totally, completely surrender unto him. He doesn't say surrender unto me there. He says surrender unto him. Tat prasadat para shanti sthanam prapsati shashvata. You will get that eternal abode, eternal space, eternal place, unreturnable place by His grace. By His grace. So there he is not Bhagwan, Shri Krishna. He is Vasudeva. So also in the 18th chapter when he says that you must surrender wholeheartedly. Sarvadharman parityajam. Sarvadharman parityajam means all the gravities must be done away with. All gravities should be done away with. Then that means he becomes Vasudeva there. Sarvadharman parityajam mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shucha. So in the 16th chapter itself, earlier he says, surrender unto him, Ishvara. And now later he says, surrender unto me. Because that he is also Krishna and this is also Krishna when he says, surrender unto me. So he refers to him in the first person in that Charama Sloka of Bhagavad Gita, and he refers to he himself in the third person. As a third person, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Vruddesha Arjuna Tishtati. He doesn't say Aham Tishtami. He says Tishtati. Tritiya Purusha in grammar, not Prathama Purusha. So he is not different than Krishna. It is Krishna. It is Vasudeva. Paravasudeva. Anyway, it is important to become familiar with Pancharatra, particularly when we are going for this concept of citta vritti nirodha or citta vritti nirodha upaya. So understand that this restraint is not with reference to our empirical experience, worldly experience. This is this, that is that, this is this, that is that, etc., etc. It is in the internal realm. You don't have all these objects in the internal realm. You don't have Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha in the internal realm. Then what is the Chitta Vritti there? Without reference to objects, either likable objects or dislikable objects. It's a totally different realm of Chitta Vrittis, and Yoga speaks about Chitta Vrittis in that realm, not in this worldly realm. You are not supposed to be restraining these Vrittis, and you will never succeed in restraining these Vrittis, Chitta Vrittis. You might restrain Mano Vrittis by taking a comatic drug or under a comatic influence. That is Mano Vritti. So, Aniruddha is the Vritti of Jagrata Avastha. Yoga is not done in Jagrata Avastha essentially. It's a transcendent state. Don't be in Jagrata Avastha and do your yoga all along. That is not yoga. That will never be yoga. That will never lead to your yoga, to yoga even. You have to go to that state of consciousness. Yoga is that's a yoga avastha. Yoga avastha is a twilight state. Although it is not Turiya avastha that all of us can be going in, it is a twilight state. Neither Jagrati, nor Swapna, nor Sushupti. This will be our state of yoga. Who are raw, who are rudimentary, who are underprepared, insufficiently educated, insufficiently disposed, lacking in samskars, sufficient samskars, nirodha samskars. We lack it. We are dearth of it. Yet we can go to a state, and we are supposed to go to that state. We must cross the zone of Jagrata, Swapna, Sushupti. although not entering Turiyavastha, it will be twilight state of consciousness. In twilight state of consciousness, there are different citta vruttis, and those are supposed to be restrained in yoga. So, this was one more aspect that I wanted to bring to your notice when we are dealing with upaya, citta vritti nirodha upaya. So, it is necessary that we understand the Pancharatric precept of Vasudeva Sankarshana Pradyumna Aniruddha corresponding to Turiyavastha, Nidravastha, Swapnavastha, Jagratavastha. So, that was a kind of another extended enunciation to Nirodhopaya, means of restraint. And means of restraint not for Jagratavastha vrittis but Yogavastha vrittis. Then what is our restraint? We are only trying to restrain ourselves from tormenting vrittis to ourselves. So we are trying to only restrain ourselves from adharma, ajnana, avairagya, or any tormentation. So we are trying to avoid that. We are trying to thwart those, or we are trying to mitigate those, or we are trying to sideline those, brush aside those. That is our restraint. So our yoga is restraint of kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. So try to ponder over this. What is our yoga? Is to keep at bay Shadripus. When we do that sufficiently, then the next step comes. When the next step comes, then that too is to be restrained to go to the next step of yoga. And then that too should be restrained to go to next step of the yoga. That's a ladder. Anyway, so this is again a part of enunciation to Nirodhopaya. So with that, we conclude today's session. Namaskar all of you.